Let's come back to the UK, Debbie, and welcome you to the programme. The dark subject of deaths here.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And after the recent Andrew Bridgen excess death debate, together, the organisation hosted an excellent Zoom meeting. And that's what I'd like to focus in on today. So end-of-life care, firstly, a good death, dying of thirst, dying for a drink. We all know about, or we've all heard about Midazolam. But for those of you that haven't heard about Midazolam, Midazolam is called an essential palliative care drug, although that is questionable. There are new guidelines out now for the use of Midazolam. It's a commonly used benzodiazepine in palliative care, one of the 4 essential drugs for the promotion and quality care in dying. So I've watched the debate intensely, and I've listened to Father Professor Patrick Pulicino. He was a consultant neurologist in the NHS, and he called out the Liverpool care pathway. He's a remarkable man. You cannot diagnose dying. And Professor Pulicino has been very vocal in not just end-of-life care, but also in what's been happening during COVID. And I'd like you to just listen to a little bit of what he said.
Third point is end-of-life care is rapidly lethal because it combines sedation and dehydration. Those two are very, they sort of, they help, they push each other. So sedation causes somebody not to drink, and dehydration causes them to become confused and lethargic. So it's a vicious circle. Neither of those two should be allowed in medically sick patients, particularly the elderly. Elderly should never be sedated. And, people learn that at medical school because it can be lethal. And obviously nobody should be dehydrated. And then finally, one point is about Midazolam. And this has become, to me, it's become clearer, particularly after COVID. And I think most of us know that the peak of COVID deaths in out of hospital patients was concurrent with the peak of Midazolam use. Midazolam is a benzodiazepine. It's the most powerful one, but it has a very short half-life, so it has to be given by continuous infusion. And as a result, it's particularly used for conscious sedation, what is called conscious sedation, removing teeth, that sort of thing, where you need a very short period of sedation, which turns back, which once you move it, returns to normal. It is, if you look at the license or the label for its use, end-of-life pathways is not a licensed or label use. It's an off-label use. And the reason is because there's no medical evidence supporting. There can be no medical evidence supporting what is effectively a lethal side effect of this drug. And if you look at the British National Formulary on Midazolam, you'll find that all benzodiazepines have to be given very carefully in the elderly. And secondly, there is a contraindication in the BNF to giving an opiate with Midazolam, and those are actually both prescribed together. So you're effectively prescribing a lethal combination, which should be illegal. And secondly, you're giving it to a vulnerable group of patients, the elderly, the sick elderly. So again, not surprising that people die quickly from this.
So many deaths can be avoided. Dehydration is the start of a very dangerous death path. And Professor Pulicino has set up a website specifically for members of the public, Dehydration LifeLine.org, help for relatives. Now, this is written in very easy English, very easy to understand. Please go and look at this website. It's incredibly important, and this could save and will save lives. So part of what he says is that patients are started on the pathway, they're diagnosed as imminently dying. This is not scientifically possible. He says, if you see somebody that's being discontinued fluids, this is going to lead to dehydration, which will lead to confusion, which will then probably lead to sedation. Midazolam is a short-acting benzodiazepine. That's what it's designed for. And if you see a syringe driver by the side of a patient, ask what's in it. He then goes on to give some really, really vital advice. The signs of dehydration, very simple. Please read these. They will save lives. If someone's thirsty and can't reach their drink, maybe they're immobile, maybe they're a young person who's maybe got a fracture. If their tongue is dry, their mouth is dry, their lips are cracked, or their speech is poor, that could also be a sign. If they have a urine bag and their urine will be dark if they're dehydrated, a dark amber color. Please check the drip if they have a drip. If it's dripping slowly, then it could be that they're dehydrating. Drowsiness or confusion can be associated and is associated with dehydration. Blood tests can determine dehydration, but a really easy test is to pinch the back of the hand, the skin on the back of the hand, just pinch it up. And if it falls back and springs back quickly, you're hydrated. If it stays in a little peak, that's a sign of dehydration. Dehydration causes death. Please make sure your loved ones aren't thirsty.
Debbie, in my recent experience of visiting hospital, one of the things that I noticed straight away was that there's very little presence of nurses on the wards at any particular time. And in fact, the machines, the pumps that are giving the drips are often alarming because maybe the pipe got blocked or something and it stopped, or in fact alarms were going off because the batteries were run out and they weren't plugged into the mains. And yet this would happen for ages and nobody would come to deal with it. So as you say, if someone is unable to reach, then obviously they're going to end up dehydrated. What can people do to put a bit of pressure on to cause nurses to basically do their jobs?
Challenge, ask questions, and make sure that that person's had a drink. In my day, we had fluid balance charts. So relatives could see at the chart at the bottom of the bed, the fluids in and the fluids out. Nowadays, you have to ask. And if your loved one is immobile or is slightly confused, then it's really up to the relatives to check in with the staff all the time. And when you go to visit, please make sure, offer them a drink, because they might not have had one for quite a long time, as you rightly said, Mike.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.